How are you today?
Uh, I'm doing pretty good. It's actually a really nice Friday here in Boston. Very sunny, but very windy. I think there's like a wind advisory.
Awesome. Oh, where do you want to start?
I guess let's start. I'm just gonna play what we have for the piece so far, and then I'm gonna focus in on a couple areas that I'm trying to work on right now. So this is the going to be the Renew Outpost theme. This is like the music or kind of the starting area of the game where the player will begin. And here we go. We'll play it and then I'll talk about the idea behind it a little bit.
Yeah, you're not muted. Hey, can you hear us?
Cool. And then it would loop right there. Um, so basically, the idea that behind kind of the composition of it is um, trying to kind of capture this little bit of a magical feel. This is a Nihmory is a fantasy world, and these people, the Renew people, um, are very much kind of in tune with the earth and with growth and regrowth. So I'm just kind of um, trying to capture some of that in the music and make a theme that's kind of, you know, I suppose understated is a decent way to describe it. Something that's going to be playing while you're in this area is supposed to enhance the environment. It's not supposed to distract you too much, which is honestly some of what I gotta refine in this to really bring it all the way. Um, so the main section I've been trying to work on right now is this section right here. It's kind of undergone a lot of changes, and I had a much more intense part um, going on in there, but uh, but I'm trying to kind of bring it down. It was like a big orchestral section, and I'm trying to kind of do like a smaller little section. Alright. So right now, what I have is just these woodwinds, wherever they are, here, no, here, and then I'm trying to put in some strings, but I'm trying to figure out a way to do it that doesn't kind of like make it too epic, because is supposed to be calm and kind of unassuming. So we're going to come into this part here. Currently this melody is only in flute and clarinet, and this is an idea I had. I may want to introduce these strings here, but it might be too much. Let's see. I'm gonna go and adjust the velocity of some of these MIDI notes.
Des, can you turn up your mic just a little bit?
Yeah, how's that?
There you go. When you're talking while it's playing, it goes really quiet.
All right, sounds good.
So you want to repeat what you said about that part right there? Because I don't think anyone heard it.
Yes. So basically, I've been trying to figure out kind of what to do with this section. I originally had like a larger orchestral section going on, but I want to bring it down and make it a little bit more understated. So currently, we have these woodwinds, flute and clarinet, playing this melody, which was originally also in violins and violas. And I think I want to have some kind of strings here, but when I brought in both the violin and the cello, it came on a little too strong. I think I want to wait for the second repetition of this section here. So yeah, my idea for that section now is maybe introduce a different string instrument, maybe something similar, more similar to the violin, but not as similar as like viola. Maybe some sort of like Eastern string instrument might double with the violin nicely. So what we're gonna do right now is just make a new instrument. So these purple tracks here are MIDI tracks, and what I can do in Contact in this instrument basically is have multiple instruments loaded, as you see, and then I can make different MIDI tracks all go to the same one, and they're assigned to like whichever channel correlates with the instrument I want it to be. In this case, I may end up doing that for this part, put in this string track here, but for the moment, I'm just going to make it its own instrument track just so it's easier to work with. All right. Ordinarily, I should name it, but I'm not going to name it yet because I don't know yet what I want it to be.
Which is understandable.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of kind of having messy sessions sometimes.
I mean, I don't name all my layers in Photoshop right off rip, so, or at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this one should give me a chromatic scale, or I can make it that. It's not the one I'm looking for. I think I'm gonna take a synth, or well, it's really like a glass harmonica.
One of my favorite instruments.
Yeah, me too. Yes, please. Sounds pretty nice. I'm just gonna. That's not the one I'm looking for. Just kind of adjusting the sound and the way it plays. See if we want any effect. See if we want any effect. I'll leave these off for now. Can always add them in later. And a lot of instruments like this will have a built-in reverb, which I'll leave these off for now. Can always add them in. Does sound very nice, but for now I'm going to turn it off just because I can always send it to reverb in the session overall, which is going to make it sound more cohesive because all these are already being sent to a reverb somewhere around here, right here. It's Valhalla Vintage Verb. I was set to ambience, 1.27 seconds on the reverb tail, mostly the early reverb. This is kind of useful because if you're really trying to create a space, in this case, I'm just kind of going for a sound that sounds nice. But if you're really trying to like simulate some sort of space, it's good to think about the way, picture yourself there and think about the way the sound is going to reflect in that space. And then the early and late percentages in this plugin kind of lets you affect that. And my thing is ambience is, I mean, any sound that's around you. I like to use this for something that's supposed to sound like it's outside. And I like to use more of the early reflections because that will sound, if you're outside, you make a sound, you're gonna hear the reverberations off of the, environment around you. But unless you're in some really nice acoustical, like mountain range or something crazy, like the farther reverbs are going to be lost because they're just going to be out in the ether. But yeah, little aside about the reverb. So what I'm going to do here is take violin with just the violin and then see what it sounds like. So we have this like variation on the melody. Yes. And the other reason I want this is because the violin goes down to this note, but I really want both. I want the part like and so it's like I don't know. I want them to be in unison until that note and just introduce a little bit of harmony, kind of build up the sound a little bit. So gonna two bars before. Oh, so 6/4. Right. Got some weird metric modulations here. because this composition in particular is sometimes things I work on are a little more like phrase and loop based. Um, this is I really let the melody lead in this case. The melody was kind of how I was interpreting the idea of like the Renew outposts and the Renew people. Um, and so I kind of took a melody in the beginning, this melody here, and then I just developed it some more. So now we have it in this part. So a slight variation in kind of the rhythm. The notes are pretty much the same. And then in here, the tonality of it changes slightly. Where that came from, I don't really know. Just out of my brain.
I mean, where does everything come from?
Yeah. But yeah, sometimes when you're composing, you have a section and then you're like, you know what? For some reason, I can hear this is going to go elsewhere. And it's fun to run with those ideas because I think they're really more creative than ideas you can kind of come up with intentionally. So I like to try to go with that. So that's what I mean about kind of following the melody and where it feels like it wants to go in this composition. So
Speaking of compositions, I definitely think with AR working on Aya's theme, that um the one piece you played on the harmonica, just the renew theme, as it were, just that one little phrase, should definitely be incorporated into it. So just a note for later.
oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, one of our other composers is working on a theme for Aya, who's the main character that the player plays as. And she's of these Renew people, so it'll definitely be nice to kind of like merge these a little bit, so you can get a little bit of each in the other. All right, so I'm gonna lay down this harmonica track.
Go for it.
So I can name it now. Forgot how to play it.
Yeah, that bit right there. We do have a question for one of our viewers.
Oh yeah.
Um, Kelsey with a bunch of threes says, "How do you come up with musical ideas? What's your process?"
Um, that's a great question, Kelsey, with a bunch of threes, a person I definitely don't know at all. Um, that is actually a really great question. I don't know. Sometimes it really depends. It can be a lot of different ways. So in this case, I looked for a sound that was inspiring, that kind of fit the vibe I was looking for, which was the tuned gongs. Um, they're a really cool sound. They're something I've kind of been wanting to use more in composition anyway. And I was just playing around, and I ended up playing the thing, whatever it is, something like that. Yeah. Oh wait. Yeah, that kind of thing. Um, so a lot of times when when composing on the computer and even not on the computer, even with an instrument, I find that the sound that you're playing with will oftentimes kind of inform um, your choices and your decisions. So it's really important as a composer to work with sounds that inspire you, and that's sometimes I really like. With the computer, it can be almost overwhelming because you have basically any sound So it's really hard to, know what to pick. I like keyboards that will have like basically all the standard like MIDI sound banks, and those are fun because you can just cycle through them really easily. Uh, so anyway, it's nice. You basically play something random, and then sometimes you play something that sounds cool, and you can kind of build on that. Uh, and then you can keep going, cycling through different sounds. And the same thing happens on an instrument if I'm playing like guitar or piano or whatever. Um, those different instruments and the different ways they play and different sounds they make will lead to kind of different compositional ideas. Come up with things that you like, come up with something on the guitar that I could never have written on a piano. um so yeah, in terms of melodies and stuff like that, that's usually how it goes. Or it'll be some kind of vamp, um that something that I don't know, something that sounds nice. But that's kind of the biggest thing, is the having like a sound that inspires you, and it kind of just will write itself from then on. um yeah, and other times, random ideas come in your head. They come and go, and if it sounds cool, if you think you like it, you should write it down or record it or do something, because you will forget. So I definitely have plenty of notes on my phone for stuff like that. All right. That being said, I'm gonna lay down this track. Ooh, make sure I'm recording the right thing. All right, so now we have this other variation of the melody, where the notes have changed slightly, but still kind of the same motion, the same feeling. My record. Weird. Cool. I have to remind myself we got going on the second part. And then kind of side. So I'm gonna have it split into harmony again. So what the violin is playing here. We're kind of like shifting away from the tonal center that we have like established here, um, which is kind of gonna lead into the next section. But this is kind of just a premonition, because after this here, what we're seeing here is here. We're gonna repeat this phrase. So that's just implying what's coming in the future, but we're not gonna go there yet. But so here's how the two sound together. That's pretty good. I'm probably going to do more to this instrument in a bit to make it blend a little. But first, let's get this second part here. So what the violin is doing is like, and I think what I'm gonna do with the glass harmonica is sounds very ominous, but it will sound nicer in context. And it is a little of an uncomfortable sound because it's creating a little bit of tension and release, because that's really what music is all about. You got to have tension and release, otherwise it's not going anywhere.
I think it's funny the parallels that I get from that one piece you just played and Farewell Fee from Skyward Sword. It's kind of funny. I I don't think they're the exact same notes, but with the glass harmonica,
Mm.
it sounds really similar, and I love it. We do have a couple of questions.
Oh yeah.
So Katie Calder says, what do you suggest for first-time musicians, composers? What programs and audio equipment would be needed? And then Randomizer has, what tracks were the most fun to compose so far? And are there any fun instruments or arrangements that you particularly liked? You can answer those in any question, any order you want.
Hmm. All right. So in terms of advice for composers getting started, um, I mean, the only thing you absolutely need is some sort of instrument um, that you like to play and like to write music on. Um, in terms of composing in a DAW, like this, and composing on the computer, if you're using a Mac, the easiest thing is GarageBand because it's already there. Um, there are a number of other free DAWs, I believe, that work on Windows. I want to say Cakewalk is one of them. I remember somebody was using that. I haven't really used it, so I don't know too much about it, but a lot of these programs work the same way. They basically are all designed to simulate like a studio. As you can see here, this is like supposed to be your mixing board. Um, they're basically supposed to simulate like analog recording back in the day. This is Pro Tools. This costs money, as a lot of these do. But um, Pro Tools was like one of the first digital audio workstations, and so it's very closely um, it's very close to using like an actual analog mixing board in kind of the way it works and the way the signal flow works, which can make it confusing for like a first time user, but I really like it. I've just gotten very used to using it. And once you know how to use it, you can use like any DAW. And that's pretty much true with anyone anyway, since they all work pretty similarly. The other thing is a lot of them will allow you to do like a free trial, um, which can be fun to get your toes in the water, decide if you like using it before you want to spend hundreds of dollars on a license. Um, like I know, for example, Ableton Live has a free trial you can do, which
Reaper
I've been
has
meaning to
one
do.
too.
Yeah, and I've actually been meaning to try a free trial of Ableton just because that's a really good one. It's also very user friendly from what I know. A lot of the quirks that come from translating analog audio recording into a digital format were kind of eliminated when they made Ableton because they were like, hey, this was made for to be based on a system that people already knew and were using all the time, so it'd be easy to switch. But now everyone's doing it digitally, so why is it arbitrarily more complicated? So Ableton's nice because it kind of simplifies things. Um, and a lot of electronic artists and I think a lot of hip hop producers um, like to use it. It's got a lot of good built-in plugins and instruments and synths too, I think. But I have very, very limited experience with it. Um, but I'm trying to look into doing more. The reason I use Pro Tools now is I used to use Logic, which I mean
Hey,
I still
same.
do. Yeah. I had it for school and I would use it. And then it got to a point where I used a lot of third-party plugins and instruments like Contact here. Um, and I would always want to bring the final product into Pro Tools for mixing that's I think where Pro Tools really shines, is when it comes to like mixing it. I think it's the best for that. That being said, they're all pretty much the same as I said before, but I think it's really, I don't know, I really love it. So then when I realized that I'm basically only using things that already can be used in Pro Tools, I just gonna cut out the middleman. I actually had in one of my semesters at school, three of my favorite teachers all independently roast me for producing in Pro Tools, but here we
Wow.
are, still doing it. Just because it's, especially with MIDI, a lot of people don't really like how the MIDI works. I'm just so used to it now that I don't really have a problem with it. But yeah, I kind of forget what the other. I feel like there's another part of that question I was going to answer. Okay.
No, I think you answered that one. The other one
Cool.
was what tracks were the most fun to compose so far, and are there any fun instruments or arrangements that you particularly liked while working on them?
Um, Honestly, one of the most fun ones, maybe we can share on a future stream, is the theme for the first dungeon of the game. And something that's really interesting about this is there's kind of two variations for it. So the one, and this is another good example of where do ideas come from. I was just playing on a keyboard and was playing this little riff on like a harpsichord sound, maybe a clav sound or something, and I just made this eerie sounding thing, and I was like, oh well, that sounds like it would be good for the dungeon based on what I know about it. I don't know, I don't want to share too much, but based on what I know how it's supposed to be. Um, and so kind of I basically built out from that riff and kind of built a piece out of that. So that one was a lot of fun because I like kind of doing like dark, eerie sounds and using sound design, kind of like non-musical sound design in a musical way, um, which is something I was trying to do a little bit of. That one's still in progress too. I mean, nothing's really set in stone yet. Um, but something else that's really fun about that one is um, we needed a variation for basically um, a for kind of the end of the dungeon. And what I ended up doing is actually taking the entire track and just reversing the audio completely. And that was it, like literally nothing else. And it it sounds like it works. And yeah, I'll show you guys that in a little bit. I'm just gonna get this part laid down finally. And then yeah, once we get towards the end, I think I can pull those up for you and just give you guys a sneak preview.
Sounds
All right.
good.
So anyway, so we have this one part. Oh. All right, and now I'm gonna record the second part. When I record things like this, I like to give it a little bit before, kind of get in the zone. Um, if I start right on it, like I'm like, oh god, I'm not ready. Like, what am I playing again? Like, just forget everything. So it's nice to kind of get the whole vibe. Should remind myself what I am gonna play. So I'm gonna do. All right, get ready. So then in this repetition basically of this section, we're going to bring in a couple more instruments. So now we have, I'm actually, hold up. No. I'm going to double check that this is the same. Okay. I'm basically going off of my original concept here. Just making sure I'm playing the same things. I think I'm probably just going to copy this over. Let me just see. And if need be, I can always cut out a bit, re-record it, or move notes around. Which kind of brings me back to the thing about getting started in composing in DAWs. I think some kind of piano skill is really helpful. You don't have to be the virtuoso, but the more you know on piano, the easier and probably more fun it's going to be, because you can always, as I said, edit stuff around. With MIDI, it's a pretty forgiving way to compose, but it's really fun to as I've been doing it over the years, I've kind of gotten better at playing keys and kind of like playing and hearing the parts I want.
Yeah. So Lupin Bebop says piano skill is very helpful. Would you say that some theory knowledge would help as well?
Yeah. Well, yes. Especially for this kind of composing. Because it's kind of just the foundation of the, I don't know, the whole music. I don't even know really how to describe it. But in what I'm doing here, coming up with these harmony lines and stuff, it helps to kind of know the chords and chord motions. At the same time, I sometimes think, coming from like a musical education, I do think it's possible to get trapped by the concepts of music theory. They're really a guideline and kind of an explainer for why things work the way they do. But I don't believe that there are hard and fast rules. They're definitely good to know. It'll definitely help in composing a lot. And I found when learning about music theory, it would kind of like inspire my composing mind. But sometimes it's fun to do things that are kind of not really typical in music theory. And honestly, it's becoming a lot more common in like popular music, where you might have chords, and then from a theory perspective, the way they fit together doesn't really make sense, but it's like they just sound good, so who cares? And then it's also cool to, like I was saying, using sound design and other sounds. I like to it's cool to have things that don't really fit in any sort of musical convention and think about sounds in a completely different way. Sounds that you don't really think of as being musical. It's not an instrument, but think about it in a musical context and like how it can be used to kind of create music. So right here, we're going to add in this cello part that I had already recorded, because I was originally going to put it here, but I don't want that. I don't think I want this sound. I think it's too intense. Um, but I think something on that spot would be nice. So what I'm gonna do is it's always good if you're gonna make a drastic change to I like to keep what you had before, even if you're like 99% sure you're not gonna go back to it. It's good to have as a reference. So I'm gonna make a new playlist here. Um, and basically what I'm gonna do is copy this over here. And now this one I can screw around with and delete stuff. But now if I ever, decide that that was right or whatever, I can always go back to it. I have it there. So just without it, let's see. All right, I'm gonna go back to here. So there's some percussion. I want to hear like the variation. I want to see if it adds like some energy without making it too intense. Cool. So I do think it needs something in place of that. I'm not sure what, but we can always play around. I also want I kind of want these to be a little lighter. What am I looking at? All right. So I'm gonna go into this instrument over here. This is voice and body percussion. This is an instrument made by Imogen Heap, actually, or in collaboration with this company, Sonic Couture. They have some really cool libraries. Actually, I have a couple other that one, some other ones that are also made by them. Yeah, they're they're really cool. They're not paying me to say they're cool. They just are. All right. These are the sounds. So once I trigger them with the key, I can like adjust each one. I want to pan it more. Um, so I'm gonna use this, the high pass filter, take out some of the low end. I want it to kind of be like a light tapping. So yeah, let's see how that is. This one's still a little much. Huh. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of achieve this goal. And I think using multiple ways kind of in conjunction is the best way. So what I'm doing is the simplest thing is obviously just turn the volume down. But I'm also using this high pass filter to change like the quality of it. This kind of is cutting out the low end, the low frequencies in the sound. Yeah, I like how that sounds. Um, awesome. And so obviously still a work in progress, but that's a little bit of kind of the process of how I'll go about working on something. I think what I'm gonna do now for you guys is just play this whole thing as a loop. So this is how you would hear it in the game. And then I can show you that other piece I was talking about as a little treat. So I'm gonna let this play for you guys. And then it would loop. The thing with a lot of game music in this context where it's kind of background music for a different area, a zone in the game, around 2 minutes is usually a pretty good length. You want it to, I mean, you can always do more if you want, just creating more work for yourself, but 2 minutes is a pretty good size. um, and you want to kind of, this starts over here, we move away from that idea, and then we bring it back in the end so that when it loops, it's hopefully basically unnoticeable, um, because you don't really want the player to think about the music too much. I mean, unless they're really into it and they think it's really cool. But you want to enhance the gameplay and the immersion, and for them to really feel like they're in the worlds, um, and for it to like add to the environment. And then so you want it to loop seamlessly, so it just feels like this is like the music of the landscape. It's just the natural sound, not like a piece of music that's looping, because you also don't want to get sick of it. So you have to kind of create something that can be listened to repeatedly without being making you crazy. All right. So that is the Renew Outpost theme, work in progress. And let me pull up this. When it comes to composing for a game or a film, the the thing about it is, as a composer, you really, if the viewer, the player doesn't think about the music at all, then you have done your job perfectly, which is kind of an interesting thing to think about. You really have to kind of set your ego aside, and like, bear in mind that your music, obviously you want it to be amazing and you want people to love it, but the real goal in that setting is to make music that serves the project. And no, yeah, I'm not currently sharing my screen. Sorry. So this here is the dungeon theme. And so really what the theme is this section here. I kind of had like intro, outro bits as ideas, but it turned out to be easier to just kind of have this more contained loop. And so we're gonna go for it. Oh, this is all, I have the boss battle in the same section, so all these tracks are for that.
Gotcha.
And there's the loop. So yeah, in this one, it's a little more of an ambience. So it doesn't really have like a, other than these like do 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 do, doesn't have like a driving melody or anything. But there's still a bit of an arc. You can hear like the bass starts as just like a synth drone.
Also,
And
Fuzzy
then,
Socks had a question whenever you're
oh
available.
yeah,
So they asked, does the boss fight follow the same motif?
um, not exactly, but it is in the same key, and actually a little bit because it does also use. Um, so basically, what I was gonna say is how basically it starts with this drone synth, and then it kind of crossfades into this like it's kind of like pulsing synth. Um, and the boss battle uses some of that and some of these other sounds. So I guess yes, pretty much. Because I definitely want it to be, to sound natural. Because you're gonna go from this to that. So you want it to be, you know, make it sound like not like, oh, now a new piece of music is playing, but like you want to kind of sound like your emotions. This is like you exploring dungeon, and then you get to the boss, and it's like, oh my god, I'm freaking out now. All right, and so then I think this is the one.
The pulse is a bit menacing. I mean, which is good, I think. Yeah, no, it's very good. For what's going to be happening, uh, it's it's exactly what this dungeon needed. It's what the boss theme needed. I mean, we're in a really good spot from an audio perspective. Honestly, we're in a good spot all the way around. Um, in the amount of time that we've been working on this, I think a lot of the pieces are finally starting to come back together. And I can't wait to show you all more, honestly. You mentioned wanting the player, or Lupin Bebop says, you mentioned wanting the player to understand the freak out moment for boss music. Musically, how do you like cueing the player to that moment? Who is doing sound effects?
Um, Me.
I was gonna say
um,
we've got a nice team of composers that are not just doing background music, but they're also doing sound effects and menu effects. And I mean, if it's audio, this team is what's handling it for the most part.
yeah. And then in terms of like creating that emotion, honestly, the biggest thing in the music is percussion and just like um creating intensity. Um, from a specific sound effects perspective, I guess that's to be determined. We haven't really gotten exactly into that yet, but um, I think um, when some of like the sound design stuff is more finalized, that could be a future stream. I think that'd be interesting. Um,
Yeah.
all right,
No,
let me make sure.
curiosity is absolutely welcome. This is one of the first times we're trying this format to get some stuff out that's more than just still images and audio clips from our Patreon. Because we do have a Patreon. That's where we have supporters, and they've been seeing a lot of this stuff, but we really haven't been able to get a whole lot out there publicly like this. So this is a new format. We're definitely trying to do once every 2 weeks or once a week. We're still trying to figure out the schedule and everyone else's schedule and what we want to show, what we want to kind of hold back because there's a lot that's in the works right now on each team.
So this, you have your boss battle, and then there's going to be a room after the boss. Um,
Yes.
some
Our
some
little
lore,
hologram
and
sort of deal.
yeah, I let Faye decide what details are to be shared. But this, if this is the right one, is what the music will be.
Room with the prize. It's less a room with the prize. So one of the big motifs of the project is Aya learning history and essentially it's one of those playing off of the phrase those that do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it plays a lot into it. And I is going to end up after this in a room where she's going to encounter a piece of history and then kind of make a decision, um, not just with this one piece of information, but with a lot in the game as a whole, in terms of which ending essentially the player is going to get. And it's not just Aya, it's obviously going to be the player who is, playing Aya. And that is what is in this room. It's this piece of lost history. So what I essentially asked GostPepper for was this kind of space between what Nihmory is now and what Nihmory was. And this is the piece that we ultimately ended up with.
Yeah, And this is an example of something I find a lot, especially when I listen to kind of like very experimental electronic music or any sort of experimental music. Sometimes I'm just listening to something and I'm like, how did somebody think of making this? And I think in my experience, I've come to realize that they just did something random and it was cool and then like ran with it. And that's basically what happened here. For whatever reason, I had the audio track from the piece you just heard. And in Pro Tools, you have this handy feature, Audio Suite. This allows you to basically, these are like plugins I have. It basically allows you to like write the effects of a plugin into a clip of audio. And once you do it, it actually changes the audio. So there's times where you might want to use it, but I don't use it too much. But the most fun thing is another is reverse. So I did that, and this is what I got. And then I think I have a version that loops a little better, but that's basically the idea. I think that's just the reversed one, and then I like tweaked it to loop. And yeah, and it's really just the straight up just the audio, flipped it around, like how they used to do with records back in the day. Be like, oh, play this record backwards, and it says a satanic message or something.
Oh,
I feel like listening to any vocals backwards is always a trip. So I have these two things. So essentially, this is what
My
we
name
start
is
with.
Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
So
oh, is
just
that without? Oh, I see. Okay.
that's been nothing.
Yeah.
So did a little EQ and compression. This is just to make the just make the voice sound nice in general. And then I think there's like a little bit of like a mic pop somewhere I have to get rid of, but for now I just wanted to kind of focus on some of the creative things to get some ideas. So the first thing I did basically, so I had this flanger and this chorus, and then I made a reverb and this like delay, and then I'm sending it to both of those. So So this is just play. Oh,
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
so that's just like EQ compressed. So then I added the flanger. And that's gonna get a little crazy.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
So this is like a very sci-fi, alien sounding voice. I added this chorus.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
Which makes it sound like a little more like ethereal. It's hard with the flanger. It's kind of hard to hear what the chorus is doing, but with just the chorus here.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
It's basically kind of doubling the sound, so it sounds like multiple people are saying it sent together.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
And then I had a reverb and this delay, this echo delay. This Echo Boy from Sound Toys. Sound Toys also makes cool plugins and also is not paying me.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
So this is the first variation that I sent, and I have this reverb. This is a non-linear reverb. If I do this, you can kind of hear just the reverb. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. It's not like a typical, it doesn't sound like you're in a space and sound's bouncing off the walls. It's kind of like the sound is like phasing in and out of reality. That's how I picture it. So I like that for this sound. So I sent that one and I was like, I know it sounds a little bit sci-fi-esque, which is not off track, but it could be a lot. And then I ended up sending this kind of variation where I basically just turned down the flanger and I think I gave it more of this reverb. So it sounds a little more ghostly.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory. We are at war with...
Yeah, and then Kay had the idea, just put them together, which is honestly a really fun, like, kind of instinct. I feel like that's something that happens to me a lot, is I'll have different ideas in a composition and I'd be like, well, what if I just combine them? And sometimes it works out pretty well. So they're just basically the same thing with like slightly different amounts of some of these effects. And it's this exact identical audio just playing right on top of each other.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory.
And that kind of, I think that's a good balance because it gives you the kind of ghostly sound, a little bit of a sci-fi sound, but it's also not like too much of either one. And yeah, Faye, do you want me to play the whole thing or?
Yeah, we could go ahead. I think we'll play the whole thing. We'll answer the questions in chat, and then we will go ahead and raid someone.
Cool. All right, here we go.
My name is Sersha, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory. We are at war with the ancients, gods long forgotten by most of the world. Due to our greed, Nihmory is crumbling. While some fight to save all that we've built, fight to preserve our way of life, others, like myself, have chosen to leave this life behind. Nihmory was an advanced, prosperous world, but our advances came at a great cost. We had forsaken the land from which we had grown from, leaving it to turn to ruin. The ground, the water, the air, all become polluted with our greed. These floating domed cities provide what little nutrients remained in the world. It protected us from the toxic smog and acidic rains. Artificial sunlight masked the darkening world around us, providing us with false hopes of a future that was long dead. The ancients knew we were destroying the world. That has to be why they came. That has to be why they did this. To stop us, to destroy us, too. If you're seeing this, that means there's hope. I don't know what the world will be like. I don't know what the future will hold. But this could have been prevented. If you want to survive, stop this madness.
And there you have it.
Awesome. So the last few questions that we have, let's see. Lupin said, how did you go? All right, answer that one. Sorry. I'm assuming you're using typical vocal compression and reverbs for your recordings and board work. And then do you have any presets that you use reverb or EQ wise?
For EQ, not really presets, but I do have some like zones in the spectrum here where that I know I kind of want to focus on. So in the voice, for example, usually around 500 hertz here is kind of like a very mid-rangey sound, kind of hollow sound, and cutting that out a little bit usually clears a lot of it up. And then in like deeper voices, you can kind of do similar thing around like 350 or so. And then another thing is usually somewhere around 2000, 2K, somewhere around like 8K sometimes. I like 2K has like nasally sounds. And then I think for certain things, there's like some weirdness at like 8K. But so there's certain areas like that I've just from experience have gotten used to like looking for. And that's just, these are just frequencies that you can kind of cut out that will just make it sound clearer. I do a lot of subtractive EQing, where instead of like boosting things, a lot of times I'm taking other things out. Though there is a time and place to boost things with EQ. And usually what I'll use it with this one because I'm not using it, but make it like the narrowest Q. And you can just use this to go around and like look for different frequencies.
My name is Saoirse, and if you're seeing this,
Hold on. There.
my name is Saoirse, and if you're seeing this, then there may yet be hope for Nihmory. We are at war with the ancients. God's.
So you can, if there's like a sound you're hearing that you don't like, that you're trying to take out, like you can kind of look for it like that. And then, take it out if you want, bringing the EQ down for that frequency or whatever. In terms of presets though, I do use some presets on this compressor, because it just has some ones, like the ones I use the most would be vocal, voiceover, bass, drums, guitar, and then sometimes I like to use this bouncy one. I don't know, they're convenient. This is obviously like a voiceover. Anything that's like not singing, I like to use this. And then I always kind of tweak this stuff anyway. These presets will set the attack and release of the compressor. I think it will also change these and like what they're doing. And then I think it also set the ratio, but I usually set that myself anyway. And then of course the threshold and gain is all up to you. The way I learned is you kind of want to bring the threshold down to like your lowest point, and then from there, of course, it'll tell you how much the gain is being reduced, and then you put it back in. Yeah. With any other questions?
Nope. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks once again, GostPepper, for being here and doing this. Alrighty. See you guys next time. We're going to have our lead artist and myself, and talk to you soon.
Thank you guys.